So today I'm going to talk about PENSA psychology. Funnily enough, that's what I do, about occupational psychology. I'm not actually going to talk about my life history and everything about where I came from, how I got into it, what I get up to, or anything like that. So I thought what I would do is just pop that slide up there so that you can get a little bit of a flavour of what I get up to. You can have a look at that, and if there's anything that sort of like piques your interest and you want to know a little bit more about that. As you can see, I was a delightful baby there. You know, that's me. The rest of the babies aren't me, but they are related to me, if you like. You know, so they wouldn't be here if I wasn't here. So there's lots of people around, lots of dogs, lots of love, and lots of kisses, and lots of smartness as well that's in there. So if you want to know more about that, about me, book a one-to-one. So I'm not going to talk about that one today. So what I am going to talk about today, and I'll just get rid of this screen share, is PENSA psychology and what we actually do, because there's a little bit of a fallacy sometimes, you know, about occupational psychology, about exactly what it is. And, you know, certainly when I talk about well-being and resilience, people do sometimes think, oh, yeah, so well-being, that's all about mental health and that way. Well, it can be, but it's not all about that. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen again. I'm just going to bring up my my web page. So there you go. So can you see that now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, PENSA psychology. So this is a great website. You know, if you ever want a recommendation for someone to do a website, he's actually a 1Network member, David Crushell, who put this together. It's a fantastic site, but I wanted to draw your attention really to the services and the things that we actually do. You know, you can have a good look at this, and you know, I can give you the link and have a look at the website and see what we do. But in particular, the services in psychology. Now, like I say, a lot of people think that you know, well-being, resilience is just about the mental health side of things. Well, that's one aspect of it. It really is just one aspect when people are struggling. And the basis of what we do and the nucleus of process is taken from the British Psychological Society's research papers, because everything that we do as chartered psychologists is based on empirical research. So what we do has got a high factor, in fact, 95% probability of working, because that's the stats we use, the P-stat there. So it worked because it's been researched, you know, the things that we put in there. So the basis of this is like I say, based on the British Psychological Society's recommendations for well-being in the workplace, which I actually contributed to that research. And as you can see, there's quite a few things that we've got here. The actual components of well-being are really looking at the strategy, first of all. So, you know, we offer the service to look at well-being strategy and policy in an organization, because what you do actually find is that organizations jump into a trend and they will do certain aspects, tick box exercise, and then move on and not do it at all. But there's no actual strategy as to how they're going to take that forwards and develop it furthermore. So going hand in hand with that is having a stress risk assessment where, you know, if it was anything physical, health and safety executive would be all over an organization that didn't carry out their physical their physical risk assessment. When it comes to stress risk, it's exactly the same thing. If you don't carry out a stress risk assessment, then it's highly likely that you don't know where the stress risks are coming from, or if there are any stress risks present at all. So how can you mitigate something that you don't know is there, or you don't know what it looks like in that way? So those two go hand in hand. Now, the other aspects of the well-being, and one thing that I do find is quite important, is the leadership and management development. Now, we can work with individuals, we can coach them, we can counsel them to some extent, we can offer assessments, development, and we can work with them. But the difficulties that we have there is that the individual will change, but the organization that they're within will not change. So if there are bad working processes that are in place, or if there's a toxic environment, if there's no psychological safety in that environment, then it's very, very difficult to make changes working at the individual level. So that's where the leaders come into this. And that's why it's so important to balance our leadership development. Now, I'm not talking here about traditional leadership development where, you know, leaders may I don't know, look at different leadership models and say, yeah, this is great. I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do that. So, you know, the transactional leadership or anything like that. It's having tools in their box, in their toolbox, if you like, that they can be agile leaders, you know. So leading through times of adversity takes a completely different style of leadership than one would have when things were going really well, if you like. But the leader needs to have that sort of emotional intelligence to actually know when to shift from one leadership style to another. They also need to understand what type of culture they want in the organization. And frequently, you know, I consult with people who say, yeah, I want to have a better culture in this organization. And, you know, I look them in the eye and say, well, what are you prepared to do about that? So, well, I'd like you to develop the team so there's a better culture. So, well, how about we develop you first? Because leadership starts with you. And if you don't develop yourself and actually express that culture that you want and actually walk the walk and talk the talk, then it's highly unlikely that your team are going to follow that and adopt that culture. You've got to base this all on trust and things like that. So that's where we come in with the leadership development. So I'm going to show you something that I'm working on at the moment, and this is part of a leadership development project that I'm doing with the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do, to be perfectly honest. So that is part and parcel of the consultation, in that if they don't know what they want to do, then we advise them on what we could potentially do. So I'll just, that's the right one. So I'll pop this one up for you. So this is just something that I've put together. So what we actually found out, you know, from consultation and really peeling back the layers of the onion with the organization, was that some of the leaders and managers were, you know, extremely nice people, but they were having quite a lot of difficulty expressing themselves in you know, the discussions that they might have to have with people. So having those difficult discussions and being able to gauge their own emotions in accordance with others around them. So to get the point across, but in the nicest possible way, if that makes sense. So radical candor. They've still got to get the message across, but they don't want to do it in an obstructive way that is going to actually damage the individual's self-esteem or anything like that. So that's what they were struggling with. You know, basically they were too nice. I don't know if there's any way that people can be too nice, but they were too nice to the point that they weren't being effective. So we decided to put together a workshop for emotional intelligence to give them some sort of insight in how they can potentially regulate their own emotions and understand their own emotions so that they can actually contribute to other people and how other people will interact in the working environment. So I put together this little workshop for them, and I'll just really run through. So the first thing that we would do is give them that psychoeducation. So we've got the information there. I call it the psychoeducation because people think that that's quite funny, but it does give them the underneath roots as to why we're doing these things. So a little bit of the theory. And then what always goes on top of that is putting it into practice. So something specific from their organization, like the case studies, would be actual events that have happened that have been sanitized from their HR department to say, well, this sort of happened X amount of years ago, and we can sanitize that to a point and change a few bits and pieces, but make it realistic so it's really in that environment. And they're given these case studies to potentially discuss, but apply what they've taken from the psychoeducation that we've got there. So this goes on. You know, we've got the definitions of emotional intelligence, and get them to talk about what an emotion is, because a lot of people don't always know what emotions are. They might think that they're unconscious, but they're not. They're conscious. We know that we have emotions. We just don't know how to describe them sometimes. So we know that they happen. We don't know how to describe them. And the elements of emotions, but also a little bit of the brain functioning as well. Not too much on this one, but basically the amygdala will push us into autopilot. So that's the emotions, and prefrontal cortex is the voice of reason. So this is the 4 quadrants that we go through, which is Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence. And this is really the crux of it, isn't to how they can work it. So I would work through with the managers in making sure that they're self-aware, and then we can work on the other quadrants as we go through that. But fundamentally, they need to be self-aware before we can do anything else. And then, of course, once we've done that, we can start working on their own regulations of emotions, and how they can actually mitigate things that are happening, what they can put in place, grounding techniques and all that sort of thing. Then we do a little bit of active listening. So we learn how they can put this into practice, with people, how they're going to listen to people, how are they going to respond in situations? Can they control that poker face? Do they need to react in the right way? Do they need to make a judgment at that point? It can be very difficult at times, certainly when we've got our unconscious bias as well. And then the difficult conversations that we have, certainly with the radical candor, so how do we approach someone and get the bad news across, but probably put a little bit of salt and pepper on it and season it a little bit to make sure that that individual goes away feeling that they can actually overcome the difficulty that they've got, rather than feeling as if they've been pummeled to a point where they just want to leave that organization. So that's where we sit with the radical candor. And of course, with any good psychology workshop that we would do, we'd always have a reflective model at the end so that we can validate what we've done throughout the day, but also to validate for the organization, because this will form part of their management training. So if they do have new managers that are coming in, this will be one aspect of what they will go through as part of their induction process, or maybe a little bit further on when they become senior managers, so it would be part of their ongoing training. So we need to reflect on it so that we can actually improve it in an ongoing way. So the other thing that actually goes hand in hand with this, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, is the coaching support that goes after. So anytime that you're talking about emotions or anything like that, if you do build good rapport with a group of people, they can sometimes get a little bit nervy, a bit edgy. They might want to talk a little bit more. So always offer the coaching support. So I would do a workshop in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I would sit down with individuals. There'd be 12 delegates on these type of courses, and then go through a one-to-one with them and let them have that facility. If you don't get it done in the same day, which you can work out, if there's 12 delegates on the course and then there's an afternoon, that's not 12 hours worth in there. They get a phone call afterwards, or a Zoom coaching session over the next week or so with that one. So that's pretty much something that we do. That's just an insight. I didn't even stick a timer on there to know how long I was going. I've probably gone over, haven't I, Julie? Or am I doing
1 minute.
okay?
1 minute over.
Oh, 1 minute over. Oh, that's not too bad, isn't it then? So I'm going to stop there. I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of insight. If you want to visit the website, have a look at the website. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of what David's done to actually bring it to life. And you can book an appointment there. You can pass that on to other people if they want to have an appointment. 30 minutes, I don't charge, well, to be perfectly honest, I don't think I've ever had a 30-minute chemistry meeting. They've always gone a lot longer than that. And if I can help someone out without actually contracting and doing business, then I'll still help them out, So anyone's welcome to come along and listen to what we've got. So